Hey guys, just finished watching Marvel's Cloak and Dagger, Season 1, Episode 1, and Season 1, Episode 2. First Light, and Suicide Sprint. These episodes were pretty interesting. These first two episodes was quite interesting watching this. And this show, to give you a quick summary before we get into the episodes and stuff, I really like this episode, the show. It kind of feels a little bit like the Netflix shows. Now I wouldn't say it's one of my I wouldn't put it. I would say it feels kind of like the Netflix show because it feels like the quality in that and the production value feels pretty good. Nothing feels cheap at all, even though I know it's on Freeform and it usually tends to be a little bit more like the cheaper, like the CW compared to higher budget like Netflix and HBO and things like that. But they really did very well with this show. There's not much CGI in this. We still so far haven't gotten to the point where the characters have controlled their powers yet in the first two episodes. So it's really their powers are just really kind of very very limited. And then once we get into it and once they start learning their powers, then they'll be able to do it more often and there'll be more of a special effect to it too, and they'll be more controlling it and be more encompassing with the special effects. So far it's pretty good. I kind of put it there like it's I still prefer obviously Daredevil over this. If I had to choose lose one show, Daredevil or this, I'd obviously cut this off and keep Daredevil just because I love that a little bit more, the action and the violence and the stunt choreography and stuff. But for this show, it is really definitely a character driven episode, like I saw the actors described in talking about the show and stuff, and it is really a great show. Doing that, I really like it. I'm giving it, I guess I give these first two episodes, and they both so far the show has a 6.6 out of 10 on IMDb. I would give it more than that. I'd definitely give it an 8.5 for these first two episodes. Now I'd like to see a little bit more to see where things go with the storyline and how things kind of build into what the story is, because so far the only story we have, the season, so far the built-in season storyline, like the thing that they have to figure out, the villain of the story of the season, is pretty much just there's not really too much there. They haven't started investigating and building into that. We only have 8 episodes left, so it looks like here on IMDb we only have 10 episodes for this season. It's going to be cool to see where things go with that and where that storyline starts to build up and how that goes and how they start using their powers once they become Cloak and Dagger. And so far they're not necessarily that. They have kind of the powers, but they haven't figured out how to use them really just yet, and they haven't become Cloak and Dagger. So it's going to be cool to see where things go with that. I feel like it's going to be pretty much like the Daredevil Season 1, where it's going to be kind of pretty much building up to becoming the title characters, and maybe at the end of the season they'll be called we'll get to see them as Cloak and Dagger. We might see them a little bit earlier than that, but they might become actual that, and we'll have to wait and see where things go with these two characters. So let's start off and jump into the actual episodes and where things go. So the first episode we start off with the flashbacks, or at the beginning with young Cloak and Dagger, and we find out that Tandy's mom is addicted to drugs after she hurt her back, and Tyrone is stealing a car radio as a young kid, and then an oil rig ends up falling into the water, and we see that Tandy's father is actually working for Roxxon, and he's worried about the oil rig breaking down and gets into a car crash, and they fall off just after the oil rig breaks into the water, and Tandy and her father fall into the water, and that's when Tyrone's older brother gets blamed for stealing the radio, and cops shoot him. He falls into the water, and Tyrone jumps in after him, and he kind of goes in there to go after him, which interesting idea, the way they're doing that, the way they're just saying that they fall in, and then he falls in after his brother, and then he ends up saving Tandy and stuff instead of his brother, since he's already dead. And the oil rig ends up giving them their powers, or what it looks like, which is different because in the comic books, according to the wikis and the a bunch of YouTube videos I've been watching before this show came out, researching how they in the comic books, what happened was they actually were they both ran away from home, and they ended up getting their powers from some sort of synthetic heroin that some guy was collecting homeless people to give to try out his new heroin, and ended up killing most of them and then giving these two powers. So that'll be cool to see where this whole Roxxon story kind of continues on, and where that can kind of lead to them finding out through what their powers are and what they can do as they learn to who's behind it all and all that. I think that's really going to be cool to see where things go with all this, and how that continues on to go anywhere. It's going to be cool to see that, and the difference between the comics and this. And it's really interesting to see. I'm not sure why they didn't just use the comic book storyline. I guess they wanted to go a little bit more depth and build with this whole Roxxon storyline. You kind of gives you a little bit more of a season-long storyline, whereas the comic book story origin of them just getting kidnapped by a random mad scientist who's testing on the kids, on the homeless kids. I guess it could have worked, and they could have had that guy being connected to Roxxon Incorporated, and part of that, instead of being the oil rig breaking down in the water. But we'll have to wait and see where things go with that. So Tandy ends up meeting a guy. Then we get to the future, to the modern time. We see Tandy meets a guy at the club. Tyrone is playing basketball. Tandy ends up stealing the rich kid's stuff. She lives in an old rundown church. That's where she's been sleeping and stuff. And Tandy ends up stealing. Tandy ends up going to a church where Tyrone's there, and she steals his wallet, which was interesting because that's actually kind of flipped from the comic books. In the comic books, when they first meet, Tandy is just walking on the streets, and she's the rich kid, and she's walking by, and Tyrone thinking about stealing her purse, and she realizes that she's rich and stuff, and he's beat to it by someone else. And when she's robbed, he runs after her and ends up stopping the guy and giving her purse back, and that's when they end up start talking and hanging out, and then they get picked up by the guy who offers them a homeless shelter and stuff, and as they're running away. And then he ends up giving them the heroin that gives them, or the cocaine that gives them their powers, and that's what happens in the comic book. So it's interesting here that they kind of flipped it on its head, and they made it, they had her steal his wallet, which I could see why they wanted to flip it on its head from the comics. But I don't know, I would have gone with the comic book accurate version. I feel like it still works, that comic book accurate version of their origin. It's not like it was some story from like the 50s or 60s that was so far out there it really doesn't make sense. It's not too disbelievable. It's still kind of perfectly believable storyline they could have gone with in the comic books, and they could have incorporated, like I said, Roxxon Incorporated, have that person be working for Roxxon trying to test their new drugs on street kids and stuff. I think that would have made way more sense to keeping that and keeping the origin from the comic books. But this is definitely an interesting way to see where things go with this. And then Tyrone ends up chasing after her, and they end up touching, which activates their powers that they had since the Roxxon oil thing activated inside of them. So they touch, and then Tyrone goes to bed that night, and he wakes up. He ends up rolling around in sleep, and he wakes up on the roof and starts teleporting all over the place. Tandy ends up having a flashback, which he touches her mother. And then Tandy gets confronted by the rich kid she robs. He tries to rape her and stuff. It doesn't really go his way when she ends up stabbing him. And Tyrone ends up running. He tries to confront the cop that shot his brother, and he's running from him, and he ends up teleporting away, and the bullet ends up teleporting with him, type thing. And that was a really cool scene. Seeing that, and that's what's in episode 1. So that was pretty good. It was really cool in that episode. It definitely is a slower burn, more like the Netflix shows, because they're clearly able to. Only 10 episodes. They were able to film the whole thing. They're not trying to make any. It seems like they're not trying to make any filler episodes because they only have 10 episodes. They're not stretching something out over 23 episodes, which I kind of like. So it's really going to be cool to see where things go with this and how things kind of continue here. So let's jump into to episode 2, Suicide Sprints. We see Tandy is trying to leave town because the guy that she stabbed with her dagger ends up coming out, and she stabbed him. She's trying to leave town because she didn't know she killed him, and they find out that he's alive. Tyrone went looking for the cops, and then ends up missing basketball practice. And because of that, he ends up getting beat up by some of his basketball teammates, and he tries to teleport again. He's been teleporting every time he goes to bed, every time he dives into a blanket or something, and he can't. It doesn't work. So he ends up going home and trying to go after the cop, but he ends up going back home. And then Tandy, they try to steal. They go to a wedding to try and steal some money to pay for fake tickets and have her whole ID and whole fake identification, so she can just take off and skip town. That's what she has. She has another flashback, but kind of to flash forward to her wedding or it looks like her and her boyfriend's wedding when they're just dancing at the end of their wedding type thing, and that kind of scares her, and she runs off. Tyrone goes again looking for the cop. He goes looking for the cop, and then he ends up going back home where he sees his mother, and he hugs her, and he ends up seeing her nightmare that she keeps having after her son died. Tyrone's brother ended up dying, and that was an interesting idea, playing with that, seeing that they're able to do this, which is interesting to see, because I'm not all the origins and all the things I've watched and research from the online and stuff about these characters from the comic books. It doesn't really say anything about these vision things that they keep having, so that's going to be cool to see if these are connected to their powers. And I don't know if I'd really like adding these things into it too much. I mean, it's definitely interesting and it brings a lot more depth to the characters and all, but it's just I'd rather it be a little bit more of the action and stuff and more into the superhero stuff than adding this other third dimension power. It just seems like it's just a filler. It's just taking up a space where I'd rather them jump into the superhero-ness, or that I'm building up these two powers, because I think this show could be quite more different and interesting, since it is these two teenagers, or potentially playing the characters are teenagers, rather than anyone else doing their own thing. It's different than Daredevil and stuff, since these two have to be together. They work together. They're not a team of. They're not S.H.I.E.L.D. They're not Luke Cage with super big powers. They're not. They're different. And they're definitely going to be interested to see where things go with that and how it plays with having these two teenagers rather than an adult or type thing going at it. So Tyrone ends up seeing his mother's worst nightmare. Tandy ends up leaving her boyfriend, and that's when she's driving off from the car. That was at the beginning of the episode. And Tyrone tries to shoot the cop when he goes back looking for the cop. Tries to shoot the cop with the gun that his mother had, which his mother had the gun. We saw her take the gun out. She went to shoot at something. She was pointing it at a bicycle or something, but we never really see what she was shooting at when she had it pointed, when she went out the front door or the back door. I'm not sure. And we just see her with a revolver. So clearly he got that from his mother, but it's like, what was she shooting at and why was she shooting it? I don't know. I just think I could see her being paranoid, and I think they're just trying to set up the fact that his mother has a gun. He would have access to it, or he would know how to get it. You easily steal it from her if she has the gun always ready. And I could see her using that, and I think it would have made more sense if she would have used that to be jumpy. But she keeps everything so calm. But it's going to be interesting to see where things go with that and her storyline, and how she continues. She kind of repressing everything. Is she going to kind of blow up later on? That'll be cool to see where things go with her storyline and Tyrone's mother. But it would be cool to see why did she had that gun out in that scene. Was she just taking it out for no reason? She looks so calm and collected. It wouldn't make sense for her to have the gun, because she's always worried about someone breaking in and shooting her, and she wants to protect herself type thing. I could see that. But why was she taking it out in that scene? Just to take it out for no reason. If she was jumping on edge, maybe once when she was, one night when she's stressed out of, whatever she does for a living in politics and stuff, and she's drunk, and then she takes it out, and and that would have made more sense as to setting up the gun better way than just kind of having her go out and pointing it at a bicycle and not seeing really what she was pointing at, not really showing us there. So that was kind of a bit jarring there. So Tyrone tries to shoot the cop at the end with that gun, and just as he's about to pull the trigger, he ends up teleporting to Tandy and right in front of her car and shooting it looks like he ends up shooting her, but we see her daggers come out of her hand, so it's unclear, you know, if she kind of got shot, or did she block it with her powers type thing. You know, did her daggers create like a light and block it type thing? I'm not sure if she can do that, but I know she's pretty powerful, and I know that Tyrone Cloak is pretty powerful. In the comic books, he was even able to hold Thanos inside of his cloak. He's able to hold him inside of there, so he's that powerful. Unsure, I don't think he'd be able to do it with Thanos with the in this version. I doubt he'd be that powerful, but it would be cool to see him be potentially that powerful on this show. To see where he could go with that. I think it'd be quite cool to see that. Maybe him teleporting an entire huge truck later on by the end of the season. It would definitely be cool to see that. I think it's really going to be cool. I really like the visual effects so far with his shots. And there's that one shot when Tyrone first teleported. He goes in the first episode and he wakes up on the rooftop, and he's just has his black blanket, and it's kind of flowing in the wind, and it just looks so cool. So it's really good. Really is a good show so far. I really like where things are going. Like I said, 8.5. Really, just definitely can't wait to see where things are going to go. It definitely is a bit of a slow burn and stuff for the show, but it is really going to be cool to see where things go with this. I definitely can't wait to see where things go once they start becoming the actual superheroes, and they start using their powers. And at the end of them, they're trying to use their powers on their own. They haven't quite figured it out just yet. But hopefully by the end of the season, in episode 3, they can get an idea of how to work their powers. And you know, from the comic books, Cloak has kind of, you know, he has kind of a bloodthirst type of thing that only Dagger can really refill. And she kind of feeds him her daggers type thing, and that kind of stops him from having to absorb too many people, which kind of kills people type thing. So that's going to be cool to see if they bring that part of it into this show. And also Dagger, if she doesn't use her powers, you know, she goes too long without using her powers, she ends up discharging her powers involuntarily. So that's really going to be cool to see, and they bring that from the comic books into the show. It'll be really cool to see that here. It'd also be cool to see if we get any Spider-Man references. I obviously doubt Tom Holland will be in here. Bet like $1,000 that no, he won't be in here, but you know, even if they did first appear in Peter Parker, Spectacular Spider-Man, Peter Parker 64, so it could be some sort of reference around here. So we'll have to wait and see where things go with this. Looks like it's going to be pretty cool in the next episode. The trailer looks pretty interesting to see. Looks like they're going to be teaming up a little bit more, and a little bit more action of them together. Where so far in these first 2 episodes, they've just been kind of running into each other, but not really hanging out. So hopefully now that at the ending of episode 2, you know, him shooting her and stuff, they can really stay together, and he can realize that, oh, I got teleported right to you, you know, why is that type of thing. That could be really cool, and they could ramp up a little bit more to them becoming working together. And I think that could be really cool, because they so far have not been building up the relationship between Cloak and Dagger. They've only met a few times, so hopefully they can start building that relationship between the two of them, and then becoming Cloak and Dagger. So they're on their way slowly towards it, you know, with Tandy kind of leaving her boyfriend and stuff, and even when he called her from prison. You know, we'll have to wait and see where that storyline goes, but it looks like it's getting a little bit closer for them to become an item and going together. So it'll be cool to see that, and building out that relationship of Cloak and Dagger. So we'll have to wait and see where things go with this. It's definitely going to be cool to see, and I'm really liking where this show goes, and it's really going to be fun to watch this for the next 8 episodes. So let me know what you think, guys, about these 2 episodes in the comments below. What do you think about the first 2 episodes of Cloak and Dagger, and will you be watching the rest, and where do you think things are going to go? And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.
I'm Captain America, here to talk to you about one of the most valuable traits a soldier or student can have.
Subscribing.
Sometimes subscribing is the key to victory. Sometimes it leads to very little, and it seems like it's not worth it. And you wonder why you waited so long for something so disappointing. How many more of these?
You're still here.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, guys. Peace.
It's over.